I've spent all my adult life dealing with this region. I lived behind the Iron Curtain. I lived in post-communist Russia and other places. And I yearn for the time when the Russian people will live in freedom and prosperity and at peace with their neighbors. But that day is a long way off. I strongly endorse my friend and colleague Masha Gessen's testimony and that of my fellow witnesses. I am going to concentrate in my remarks on the external picture, the interaction of the Kremlin kleptocracy with the West. And I have to tell you, for now, we're losing. And we're losing because our adversaries understand something about our society better than we do. They understand that they can attack us using money and by abusing the freedoms that are inherent in our system. And Nord Stream's a great example of that. Sell cheap gas, buy political influence, and it's not against the law. And because of the greed and complacency, not just in Germany, but also in my country, the United Kingdom and elsewhere, we are not willing to defend ourselves. We could defend ourselves, and I give details in my written testimony about what we could do with different legal and normative instruments, but we don't. And there's a real paradox here, because it was the free market capitalist system that enabled us to beat communism. It brought us prosperity and dynamism. Democracy works better than dictatorship. The same economic system that triumphed over communism is losing to kleptocracy because it allows our enemies to buy political influence and use that to attack our decision making. When they're inside our system, they also use the rights and freedoms given by our political system and our courts to intimidate their critics. We have to understand the threat and then make the changes necessary to put our alliances first. Now, Russia's not the only problem here, but it's a great place to start because it combines both a kleptocratic system and a geopolitical threat. Russia uses its money and its influence far beyond what what a rich person has, and they have access to state resources. They can run disinformation campaigns to demoralize and distract Western societies. They can use cyber and intelligence means to surveil and harass whistleblowers and anti-corruption campaigners, investigative journalists. They can apply diplomatic pressure to protect their wealth, conduct physical intimidation campaigns, including abductions, like the one we just saw over Belarus, assaults and assassinations. Now, many people say, well, hang on, isn't China the big threat? One hears that a lot these days, and it's true that China is far more important than Russia when it comes to global economic governance. But it's still the case the Kremlin is the biggest source of instability on Europe's borders. It's the biggest source of interference inside democratic societies. It funds extremist parties, spreads disinformation, and as you mentioned in your opening remarks, Russian pipelines don't just export natural gas, they export corruption. Germany is a weaker country because of its energy dependence on Russia. It's also a weaker member of NATO, and that means that the United States has to bear a bigger burden. How we deal with Russia's kleptocracy sends an important signal to China's leaders. If we can't deal with Russia, a stagnant country with an Italy-sized economy, then what chance have we of dealing with the biggest country in the world, China? And China takes advantage of the economic, legal, political, and social vulnerabilities that are created and exploited by the Kremlin. Now, what do we do about this? We need a whole of government approach, we need a whole of society approach, and we need an international approach. The tentacles of kleptocracy are global, and our responses, as Christo mentioned, are national. Now, we can do this. No tanks crunch down Wall Street, forcing us to open our financial system to our enemies. We did that to ourselves because we're complacent, naive, and greedy. Well, we can undo that. It's kryptonite for kleptocrats, and we have it in our hands. And just finally, I want to say, speaking from outside the United States, we really appreciate the lead you're taking. The Caucus Against Foreign Corruption, the Crook Act, the Foreign Extortion Prevention Act, the Repel Act, the Trap Act. These are templates for us in the rest of the world. And I yearn for the day when my country will not be seen as the global headquarters of money laundering. It's a source of great shame to me that the City of London is the kleptocrat's best friend. I look forward to your questions, and thank you again for the opportunity to testify.